Welcome to the fifth episode of Voices of Harmonia with David Karlsson. And here today I have my co-host Elif Ergöz and our specially esteemed guest Byron Belitsos from Washington, D.C. And today we will talk a friendly talk about the Urantia Book and mysticism and human life. I will start to introduce Byron Belitsos a little bit and then Elif. Byron is an author, publisher, and according to me, a spiritual scientist. He has also written many books of himself, and he spent decades of investigating the Urantia book, which will be the core subject of today. Uh, Byron, you can introduce yourselves a little bit more if you want.
I'll just say that I live in Washington, D.C., and I have traveled in Europe quite a bit, but I'm an American who feels like I'm a world citizen. And I didn't tell you that I also work in the movement for world federation, world unity, UN reform. That's why I'm in Washington, actually. And so I'm consulting to one of the organizations that is creating a world parliament. It's called the Provisional World Parliament, and that's something I'm very proud of working with that, and that actually relates to the Urantia book. We can get to that, and I guess aside from that, I would say that I have a bit of an academic background, so my work I try to bridge to academics to some extent, but also I'm a journalist, so I'm a bridge between the educated public and advanced ideas or difficult ideas, let's say, in theology and spirituality, psychology, and other topics. And that said, I'm happy to be with you. It's the first time I've been interviewed by Europeans since a company called Red Ice, you may remember from Sweden, interviewed me. They used to have quite a big vogue. And it was the first time I think anybody ever talked about the Urantia book in Sweden about 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay, I don't know about them. And you are here because I have seen and we have seen that you are a world unifier. So you can also bridge many topics and cultures and history around the world. Thank you very much. Do you want to add something more?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay. Elif is my well-known friend. She's also an author, a publisher, also a spiritual scientist, and she also has channeled many messages. She is a channeler. And Elif, do you want to talk about yourself a little bit?
Thank you very much. Actually, I a little bit refrain from talking about myself, but I'm so proud, and it's a great pleasure to have Byron here too. As a fellow citizen, American living in other parts of the world, so it's going to be like a home sweet home for me. So I especially is gonna enjoy that, and I'm a little bit excited. I don't know why. Maybe because I heard the word parliament concept. And as you know, we have a foundation recently established in Belgrade. It's called Harmonia Foundation. And we know that Harmonia is going to be the third stage for humanity. And it is going to be a world where everything will be a peaceful settlement for everyone. And it's going to be on the seventh dimension, which I know from Urantia Book. It's the Christ consciousness where Michael, the governor of Nebadan, the local universe we are living in, is there waiting for us. So I'm so excited, a little bit sorry for my, excitement.
Oh, all the viewers have to know about themselves also. They want to know who are
you.
you.
And I want to say something about David before he says something about himself. It's also an honor for me to see him here on Voices of Harmonia. because this is the voice from the future, a peaceful future for humanity. And whoever is the guest here, as you know, host by dear David Karlsson, is a citizen of Harmonia, is a citizen, a governor of this future world. Just came here as a time traveler, so that really increases my excitement. So please have the word.
Thank you.
Like,
I'm glad to hear. This is my essence. It has always been, and my calling. Byron, the Urantia book. Can you tell us briefly about that book?
No, I can't tell you briefly.
Of course not.
But
Okay.
I'll try to
Okay.
encapsulate it in a few sentences. And I think the idea of this book is to be the kind of a forerunner of revelation to come. And so it's like the textbook. And then now you need the professors and you need the community that comes with it. So we, in order to, have a class on philosophy, you need a few textbooks, right? So
Mm,
it's mainly philosophic, I would say, but it's everything. It's really interdisciplinary. I remember back in the 70s when I was trying to get into interdisciplinary graduate work, and they didn't have it in the United States. It was all just a field, like you're in political science or you're in social science or you're in biology. So it was just beginning to happen in US education that you could do that. You could take an interdisciplinary or a transdisciplinary is a new word now they have, transdisciplinary. But the Urantia book came in as interdisciplinary in the 1930s. So they were kind of ahead of the game. So it's not really just philosophy, it's meta philosophy. It covers history, it covers biology, it covers science, it covers politics. It covers psychology, spirituality, deep history,
mm,
meaning pre-Sumerian history, way
mm,
before that. And then what we call the sort of deep future, what in the future, both the destiny of the planet, but also the origin of the planet. So that's pretty broad. But
mm,
uh, but in order to do that, you have to have a long book to cover all that. So it's kind of too long. It's 2,000 pages, and people object to that. But it is once you get reading it, you realize this thing just hangs together, and it has a
mm,
kind of impact that's in your heart as well as your mind. And I remember the first time I read it, I wept
mm,
actually at a certain point. In particular, the fourth part of the Urantia book is about the life and teachings of Jesus. And you got in the Bible a wonderful, wonderful account of that in Gospel of Mark, Luke, Matthew, and John. But those are brief. Those are
mm,
pretty short. This is, the Urantia book is 750 pages. That's
mm,
that's quite a lot compared to the Gospel of John's like 20 pages, right? So that's the part that really gets into your heart and into your life as the sort of why who is this person? I thought Jesus was this ancient teacher that only taught back then. We think of him as a sage, or if you're a Christian, you think of him as a God man of some kind. Well, this defines it with much more detail. But it's not just about definition. It is a kind of a poetry to it as well.
mm,
It's not just an intellectual appeal, as I'm saying, it's an appeal to the heart. And it's really a lot comes down to your daily life. So I would summarize the Urantia book as something to impact your daily relationship to yourself and to others in terms of a gospel, right? So we have the gospel statement of the Bible. Actually, a lot of disagreement about what it is exactly. But the gospel that Jesus presents in the Bible really does come down to, at least according to my own tradition, which is Greek Orthodox, my ancestors are from Greece, is the God, the kingdom of God is within you. But who is this God, right? It's not just within you, it's also the creator. It's the creator of the universe. It's the author of all things, right? So the creator of the universe is outside of you as the creator who's infinite and all loving, but also inside of you. How could that be, right? So the Urantia Book explains how that could be. And, really the Bible does, and the Christian tradition does have an explanation. It's very, very good. It's really, really good, actually. And I recently got a degree in theology, in Christian theology, and I got bigger appreciation for what the Urantia Book is doing in relation to the Christian tradition. In the Christian tradition, there's a mysticism, right? So we have a mystical tradition, of course, and a lot of it is lost, especially in the United States and probably in Europe. We think it's just these churches and these externals, right? But it's a great mystical tradition that's held together really in the monasteries. Of course, in Protestantism, you don't have monasteries, so there's a problem. But in Catholic and Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox monasteries hold together this mystical tradition. And the Urantia Book is also taking that great tradition and amplifying it so that it's no longer just something that monks can do, it's for everybody. And I think it really comes down to a simple practice. It's a practice of a relaxation, meditation, prayerful connection, and really getting still. And if you get really, really deeply still, then you can feel it. You can feel this presence. So the stillness is essential because just the flow of your thoughts and the stimulation of everyday life has to be slowed down. You can't eliminate thoughts, but you have to detach enough that you can sense this kingdom within. That's old language, kingdom. It's literally the spirit of deity within you. It's the gift of the indwelling God within you. So really the upshot of the whole Urantia Book is this indwelling. Not all that new. I mean, if you were Quaker, for example, the Quakers have all their discipline is based on the idea of the inner light. And so that's been, 500 years of cultivation of that. And so the Urantia Book just takes these truths and puts them together. So it's not just a mysticism. It's not just theology. It's also history. It's also politics. Imagine putting all that stuff together in one place. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a new planetary civilization. And right now we're in a transition to a unified world, to a planetary culture that's infused with spirituality. And so that's why the Urantia Book kind of comes from the future, you might say, just like David comes from the future. The Urantia Book comes from the future, and it will be a textbook of the future. But for now, there's some of us that are doing it a little bit ahead of time.
Thank you. Wow, where to start? I have so many thoughts. My mind worked like that. I'm curious about many things. To start with, where were you at when you found this book in life?
It was 1974, and Richard Nixon was president of the United States. I mean, think how far back that is. And I was like any young person, I was on a search. I was in college at University of Chicago, and we had a little circle of people. It was the first time anybody was talking about consciousness. We didn't know anything about consciousness. Back then it was like a really weird idea, right? So that, there were a bunch of us who were reading these channeled books, actually. And you had to kind of hide out because there was hardly anybody. The only people that were really listening to this or looking into this were people who were using psychedelics, which we were as well. And so there was a literature beginning to happen back then of channeled works, of esoteric works, mysticism that was not well known in the United States. And so we were studying that. And one night I was just up very, very late, and somebody came on the campus radio station at about 2 a.m. and started talking about the Urantia book. And he said that it had come from a flying saucer,
Mm-hmm.
which is not true. And that it was handed to somebody from a flying saucer, which I thought was pretty cool because I was reading a book about flying saucers at the time. So I actually went and met this guy, and I never saw him again. I don't know if he was real or what, but and he said, well, just go downtown, and back then you didn't have like Amazon, right? So you had to go downtown or something to buy the book. And so in this they didn't have New Age bookstores back then either. So, but in the regular bookstore there it was, and I thought, this is ridiculous. This is so big. And but as soon as I took it in my hands, I felt something present. Sort of like this is meant to be. So that's when it was, 1974, and because I was living in Chicago, it was a big advantage because the book came through in Chicago.
Yes.
And I couldn't believe it. And so I was immediately able to meet the people that were there. So that's another story about the people involved with it. But yeah, that's how I got it. And as I mentioned, it was the summer, and I sat and just read the whole thing. I wasn't working that summer, so I read the whole thing. And part 4 is what everybody should read. If nothing else. That's the thing that brought tears and also a relief that finally we got a teaching that makes sense about.
Exactly. I wanted to come to that. What did you feel when you read it?
Yeah, it was tears of joy, really, but it was also this relief that you get when you know that there's somebody out there that is not only in charge, but is loving, a loving presence.
There is
That,
meaning, something existential to hold on to.
yeah, it is that type of thing which, people get that feeling when they read their scriptures, right? I was later I studied Buddhism. Buddhist scripture really gives you a excellent feeling, and Hindu scripture, which is kind of all over the map, but you read the Upanishads, it really gives you this confidence. So the Urantia book is not poetic like some of these scriptures, like the Quran.
No.
It's because the Quran is like you can sing it, and and but
As a
it's not.
mantra. Yeah. I will take what once
Go ahead.
more. Okay,
I'm sorry.
okay. I go. Sorry to disturb you, Byron. I just want to put in Elif a little bit. She's also well known in different teachings. So,
Yeah.
Elif, please tell us your view on the Urantia book. That's a very broad question, but I think you can answer some of it. Yeah, yeah.
When I
Uh,
was in Florida, I was born in Florida, Tallahassee, and when I was 4 years old, my dad and mom took me to Cape Kennedy. And since then, I want to get into a ship and go back home. So when I read the Urantia, I was feeling big excitement. That's how I get connected. I feel like Okay, I cannot breathe something, and which happened at the beginning of this session with you also, huge energy. I feel connected, as Brian said, love, but it was not in the love or kind of it was more, it was like a technological connection, which I was looking for because I was trying to find a satellite. This was told to me like this word, uh, give me my satellite, I want to connect. Something like that. And my connections were starting when I was 14 years old. I was, writing, just channeling it. I was just throwing them away. When I read the Urantia book, and I had a course from David Anderson, and it helped me a lot to understand the logic behind it. And I was amazed, truly amazed, and I felt secure because there was something very big, and I was a little piece of it, maybe trying to access. And it's nice to feel safe and home here on this planet, which I never felt belonged to. I never belonged to Earth. This is what I always felt. So it was kind of a safe haven. Okay, telling Elif, you have a mission here, just do it, and you will be back home because you are at home. Something like that. That's what I felt. And I'm very much connected to Michael, and he's channeling sometimes, but I'm not publishing most of my channelings. I just published, as you know, the Book of Harmonia, first volume, recently on Amazon. Thanks God we have Amazon, and in English. And I write in English mostly. It's my mother language. So sometimes Turkish, sometimes German, sometimes Hebrew. But the satellite is a big, and it is very much connecting all the knowledge sets, which is very much important when we are talking about our future world parliament, because all knowledge sets from various directions are so valuable. If we talk about the collective consciousness or collective magnetic field, which I call a hybrid magnetic field, we need to input everything, every single aspect. So everybody has a representation because Earth is a unification center for the whole dimensions, and we are all representative of various dimensions. So we have to do it here so that at the macro level, something can be done. Oh, sorry. These voices are popping up from my computer. Sorry. And that's what I felt. Thank you for this question.
Thank you, Elif. I have some directions, but I want to go first to different teachings because I see, Byron, you also have studied many different teachings. As you said, Elif, we want to unify different teachings. The teachings should not anymore separate us. We should
No.
look at every teaching with an open eye and see, oh, okay, this gives this and this gives this. Okay, if they complement each other, it can become great, and in that case we get a higher consciousness, if we can call it that, higher. We will come back to dimensions later, and for you, Byron, also you have studied a lot more than the Urantia book. Just to clarify for people how well known you are to other knowledges, you have talked about Buddhism, but also Greek Orthodoxy. Can you tell us a little bit how you unify all the knowledge you gained under these years of yours?
The way I see that is a little different from the interfaith movement, as you, I'm sure, have in Europe as well as here in the United States, throughout the world, is interfaith dialogue. And that moves toward a unity which we need. And so I totally support the interfaith movement, which is finding principles that everybody can agree on. And what I like to do in addition is to look at the differences as well. The
Mm.
differences illumine ideas and perspectives, and to hold both differences and unity in a higher meta unity, meta level, which is not really what we do in the interfaith. Interfaith is more trying to blend, you might say. And so one must be careful because the traditions that are underlying that we have throughout the world have thousands of years or hundreds of years of practice and have a culture that goes with it, and art and architecture and poetry. And so we don't want to lose that depth of those cultures by saying, oh, well, we just have one world culture, right? So that's where we need to be careful to respect those traditions, not just respect, but to honor these traditions for their uniqueness and leave it be.
Mm.
Whereas at the same time, encourage them to be in dialogue of a different kind. It's a comparative kind. So, for example, with Buddhist dialogue, Buddhism in dialogue with Christianity, say, for example, which I've been involved with that. What we find is they're pretty different, but look at the enlightenment that comes from Buddhist practice and the beauty and the depth of that you cannot believe, particularly in the monastic setting, the kind of peace that's beyond something I've ever seen in a Christian monastery,
Mm.
because they have a mastery of how the mind works
Mm.
that you don't get in the West, really. And that's why they had to import those teachings to us, because
Mm.
that's what Spirit wanted. They wanted to bring that wisdom over to the West.
You were
And
into that with a detach of thoughts. That's I think that's a key knowledge for all human beings, and not to be one with the thoughts, but you cannot fight the thoughts. You detach. Okay, go on.
that's a critical
Yeah.
teaching. And so what in my own research that you asked, there's a teaching in the Urantia book that amplifies the teaching in Christian mysticism that's traditional, which is a detachment from thoughts, but it's not well described, to be honest.
But if we go from that and to okay, we detach from thoughts, but the thoughts we detach from can teach us something. Huh? It
Right.
can gain a consciousness. And I want to talk a little bit just to throw in integral theory,
Yeah, it's
uh,
good.
which I know. I think it's an opportunity here to look at that also. Please tell us a little bit about how you use integral theory in all this.
Oh, great. I'm glad that came up. In integral spirituality, Ken Wilber and his followers, they in particular talk about the relationship to thought in a way, as the point I was making, it's more advanced than anything we came up with in the West, and needs to be preserved and needs to be cultivated in its methodologies. So you sort of can't blend these so easily. Maybe in the future we'll blend these in a new synthesis, but Wilber, just pointed out what is well known in Buddhism is that there's a eternal witness. So the witness, what he calls witness consciousness. That's not his term. That's from Buddhist
Mm.
teaching. It's a witness, and you're cultivating this witness. So when you say want to be detached, right, from your thoughts, that's a nice phrase, but what is actually happening psychologically? It's that you're cultivating this thing that you didn't even know it exists. It's a part of you that is just in stable and permanent ability to just witness everything. So, to be able to cultivate that takes time, it takes meditation practice, and it takes teachers who've achieved that. And we don't really have those kind of teachers in the West. I mean, they've now come from the East, but so integral theory gives us the idea that this needs to be expanded, so it's not just a psychological practice.
Mm.
It's not just a subjective practice. It's also intersubjective. There's a cultural feature. Also, there's a science feature to it, right? What's the science of meditation? Well, we can measure brain waves. And if you're in an alpha or a beta state, that's the state in which you can witness better.
Mm.
Right? So, but if you're in an agitated state, you're caught up in your thoughts and feelings. So that's really a very important thing to know, is that most people walk around caught up in their thoughts and feelings and think that's it. That's their reality. And they don't realize that they can witness them, meaning you can become more aware, but you're not following them into bad decisions, for example. And now here's what is provided more from the Christian tradition, which is but it's even in Buddhism too. It's that there is a guide inside of you that is also source of thought. Right? There's thoughts that are coming from the universe, really, that are not you, not really
Yes.
you. It's from your indwelling spirit,
Mm.
right? And you're never
Would
going
you, would you say that,
Go ahead.
would you say that it is your higher self, or is it your own knowledge you have, in some archive upstairs, or uh,
No, it's not you.
mm,
It's a gifting
mm,
within you. And let's try this with the comparative. Buddhism says it's the Buddha nature. So it's that which allowed Buddha to be Buddha, right? To be enlightened. It's the Buddha nature. Hinduism said it's the Atman, which comes
mm,
from where? It comes from Brahman, right? Comes from the absolute. That's a pretty close correlation with the Urantia teaching, which is it comes from God the Father, right? God the
mm,
Father. Who's God the Father? The center of the universe. It comes from the center of the universe. It comes from an infinite spiritual conscious being who gives a kind of piece of himself, a fractal, into you. And so it's not you.
mm.
It is not you. It's not your higher self.
Is it a consciousness and energy, or consciousness only?
Both. It's
Both.
actually
Mm. Okay.
both, because it's from the source of all things. So the source of all things is energy. It's
Okay.
it's infinite energy, right? So
Mm,
it's energy, but it's also mind, and it's also spirit. It's all three, right? So energy, it's really body, mind, spirit in a way, but it's divine, meaning it's absolute, but it's a piece. It's not deity itself. I mean, the reason I say it's not deity, it's not it's not God the Father literally, is it's not it doesn't have personality. So here's a distinction that's new in the Urantia book, really, which is that the indwelling spirit is seeking personhood, is seeking
mm,
your personality, right? So there's a couple of difficult distinctions here we should get into.
mm-hmm, mm.
Uh,
I understand. So you also reach out for that, uh, like a dwelling inside, and you gain more than you more. The more you reach out, the more you gain. Would you say it is like that?
there's a reaching, but it's another way to put it is there's a relaxing,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
So
Okay.
the
So
yeah,
okay. Yeah. Okay. I understand.
It's
Yeah,
interesting. May I say something here?
of course, of
It's
course.
so interesting because in my chain of, meta programming, which I'm calling, and you're talking about the meta unity, in the meta programming, everything that enters into the meta programming is a program. So program within the program, like for instance, one program is about the frequency, magnetic fields. If you have a good productive magnetic field, you have access to higher thoughts, let's say, with higher personality attributes. And this is a very nice positioning that everybody is seeking a personality and a Christ consciousness. Then after thought comes consciousness. Consciousness is kind of an automated thought. For instance, you don't think about how you're going to drive a car if you already know how to drive a car. It's an automatic thought, kind of a more higher routinized response behavior, maybe. It's a different state. Then after consciousness comes power, because you can govern everything. But everything is a meta-programming, and without one of them, everything is not, nothing is possible. So it's a chain. It goes into higher realms, and there you have other things. I already say in my, teachings, everything has been taught so far. So what we are seeking here shouldn't be the thought itself. It should be stepping back from the thought. There is something more valuable. I don't know what it's called, but something very precious. And if everybody can access to it, uh, believe me, peace will be automatically there. Meta unity will be automatic there. And that's what I call meta programming. We are still at the very early stages. Byron, I have one very important question. Maybe you have some answers for it. How can we accelerate for the humanity to reach that status of the future, a peaceful status? Can you have any recommendations?
You asked the really big questions, both of you. This is a huge question, but we have to ask these questions, right? So boil it down again. What do you want me to address? Is the well-being of humankind, something like that?
Maybe,
How we're going to
whatever
do
you
that?
positioning it. You know that. You know the answer, I know.
Well, I get it from Revelation. I don't really know it. I mean, it's gifted to us, right? So, but I think that at the core of this is a kind of belief and a faith that humankind is intrinsically one. So how do we get to that? Well, because we have a single creator. So we have a single source. So we're one because of our source, because of our kinship through our parents, our divine parents. So it's not just a father, it's also a mother, divine father, divine mother. So we're all born from the same parents. So if you don't think that, right, if you think that immigrants from Syria are not really humans, right? They're not really humans. They should be in prison. They should be sent back or whatever we say about undesirables. Then you have violated universal law,
Exactly.
recognized law. Well, look, the Geneva Conventions, okay? So all humans have intrinsic rights because they're human. They're all the same. And that is a primary teaching of all the great religions, right? So, but the recognition of the parenthood, the parent that we're parented, adds a dimension that without sensing, remember we said way in the beginning that you feel that this thing is set up in a way gives you confidence, that there's something got your back, that no matter what happens, it's there for you. That's what a parent is like, right? A parent has your back. A good parent takes
Exactly.
good care of you all the way through until you.
Exactly.
So if humanity knew that, they all knew that they come from a single source, but it's infinite loving source. It's the same
Mm.
source. It's not different for Muslims. It's not, So
No.
without that, you can't really do it, because if you're just going to do philosophy, you're not going to capture the hearts of people,
No.
right? And we include children. How do you capture the hearts of children? And not with a bunch of philosophy, but with open arms,
Mm.
by serving their needs. So, we need to have a world that serves human need,
Mm.
and that makes dignity at the center, human dignity at the center. Well, how do you get to human dignity? How do you get to that? How do you know that? Man, how do you know they're dignified? How do you know
Mm.
that
I,
ignorant?
can I step in, Byron? Uh,
Please.
yes, because I have written some notes here, and it's what you're talking about. So we are very synced here, because I was writing first about how to teach children this before they get too confused in this world. And the other thing I was also thinking about when you were talking was, before you talked about faith, was I wrote up trust, faith, and stress, because I think gaining knowledge, gaining consciousness, working with your uh, unification of all the body, the nervous system, thoughts, and you can gain some kind of relief, which we talked about in the start of the episode. But I see it also with my children. Why don't we teach this earlier? Because
Yeah.
if I knew this today, oh my God, I shiver. My life would have been different. I'm 46 years old now. I was quite early in spiritual science. I had an existential depression 2004, so I had no choice then to my just soul just I have to why do I live? Why am here?
Purpose.
Yeah, purpose. So it was my first depression, exhaustion. So let's look a little bit about how to teach the younger people, and why do they need to discuss this in this chaos we have sometimes, with social media and every other stuff. Yeah, please elaborate, both of you.
Elif, why don't you go?
Go, Elif, please.
It is, if you live in a country which is close to a war zone, and I don't live in States, I live in Turkey and many, Africa, for instance, it's an entirely different place. Definitions of belongingness in, as Byron says, parenthood changes. And it changes how you look at it. Yes, we have one parent, common ancestor, but they treated us differently as humankind. Okay, they treated some in Middle East differently. They treated some in Sweden or United States differently. So what is this injustice coming from? So there, one starts having problems about trusting a parent. My parents are, thanks God, very good parents. So, but I had a beautiful childhood, beautiful, everything was perfect. But if I see someone who was not so fortunate as I am, I feel guilty, and a lot of thinking comes in. So I feel, what more shall I do for those to compensate, at least while I'm here, and to share my resources. So we need to form something that reminds maybe what Byron says about this common parenthood, and it is still
Mhm.
for our own good what we experience. So we have to detach ourselves maybe from those experiences, see different life scenarios in this living lab of Earth, and then talk about it somewhere where we can feel safe. I mean, United Nations, nobody will feel safe anymore there, because there are some injustices. Injustice is the major thing that disrupts everything. It shouldn't be only about talking. And another thing what Byron says is so important. Serving the human need is one that sustains the dignity. If children in Africa are starving, how can you eat something in a restaurant? It is, are you feeling responsible for that hunger? This is what we have to teach, maybe, or remind the people. I love something in the Muslim culture, and also in Orthodox Christianity, also in every almost faith it is a part. It's about fasting. It's about feeling being hungry to resonate. We don't resonate with horizontally with other fellow humans. We try to resonate vertically, and it's the cross itself, the vertical connection and the horizontal. We need to do something to open our hearts, as you said, and open our eyes, open our mind. But what is that? I'm looking for the answer. What would you say, Byron?
What I say is, if we're opening our hearts,
Yeah.
I think that you already said it. I mean, it's the feeling of compassion when it's not like an idea, it's that there are these children being bombed from the air in Gaza. And it just immediately appeals to your heart. Why? Because we're built that way. We're built to have empathy. You don't have to create it out of words in a book. You're immediately going to help somebody if you see somebody in distress on the street. You don't think about it. That's
No.
the universal. Of course, we have a certain percentage of the population that doesn't have a conscience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some say about 6% psychopathic, sociopathic, right?
Yeah.
That's an exceptional case, but really 94% of people are automatically moral even before they think about it. So that's appealing to that, appealing. That's why these spiritual teachings are important. They're telling you you already have this within you. And so a child, getting back to that question, how can you explain that to a child? That's up to the parent, of course, but the general idea comes from the world scriptures. But I insist, not insist, but I argue that the Urantia book builds on all those scriptures to give a deeper definition. So that gets into what the parents have to be good at. The parents have to know the definitions, meaning they have to be philosophic somewhat, right? Because what philosophers do is they're like technicians. They're saying, what do we mean by this? Let's agree on that. So the parent, the adult, has to know what it all means before you can creatively present that to a child.
Sure.
So that's where we need what I like to call philosophy of living, which is the institute I just started. I actually founded this institute called the Rodin Institute. It's that there needs to be philosophy, religion underlying the work of our hearts,
No.
right? Because otherwise it's not coherent. And a child can pick that up. They can pick up inconsistencies.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they point it out to you, they embarrass you, right? And well, you said this, Daddy, and you said that, but then you said that, so that's up to the parent to be consistent and coherent in their behavior. So then the kid begins to relax.
Exactly.
They know what the game is, so to speak. So that's what religion should be doing, and that's what we do see in Buddhism, especially as a philosophy. Ken Wilber, of course, is really the best art, but in Christianity and Islam, the philosophers and the theologians are essential, and they're usually ignored. But you need them to build civilization.
Thank
Yes.
you. And let us go a little bit into the concept of shadow work also, because we can think we are one, but then we can't wake up and meet life, and we feel all these emotions, and we have these thoughts and conflicts and maybe conflict, maybe only friendship and unification. But how? Because for me, it was important to first go inside and hold this inside first if I'm gonna gain some kind of progress. I cannot, deny it or put it down or something. So shadow work, and I also think uh, uh, shadow work without shaming, without guilting, is also of importance. And this is also for the children. They are also coming from other dimensions. They're coming to the world. We are not perfect, not children, not adults, none of us. We have evolution here to to have, but so we have to be able to be transparent to ourselves to look inwards. So let us look a little bit to the concept of shadow work in all of this. Please elaborate.
Big question there. You guys
Yeah,
have-
I know. But this is
I
for the
know.
viewers, and this is the knowledge people in the world have to know about. All of these aspects of knowledge. So we don't stop there. We take
Right.
this aspect also and unify it. So shadow work, yes. You
The
talked
way
about
shadow work is what you, when you look inside, you can't see it
Yes,
by
exactly.
definition. So you can't do it.
no.
Yeah.
Right,
That's
because
why you need another human to
you
see it.
you need another community, you need a family.
Exactly.
So I was with somebody the other day who was a professor, actually, a very advanced thinker, and he was talking about this other guy who and saying, well, that guy's completely narcissistic. And
Mm,
my first thought was, wait a minute, so he's projecting this onto this other guy.
Mm,
Projection is something by definition, you can't see it. So you
mm,
cannot introspect to see it. So that's where it takes friendships, right? And relationship
relation.
or for your spouse, to point out, or your kid to point out
mm.
that no, you're missing what's in front of us, right? So what does that mean? It means, who was it? Freud, Jung, right? Who said
Eh, yeah, I
discovered
don't know,
this,
but Jung for sure, I think. Yeah,
Jung
yeah,
especially,
yeah.
it was it was a scientific discovery that was shocking.
Mm.
I mean,
Eh,
common sense would tell you that people, do have an but to define it the way they did, right? So shadow work is not especially described in the Urantia book.
no.
It's implied,
Hmm.
definitely implied. But I think that's one of the reasons. So as a footnote, I should add something about the Urantia book. The Urantia book uses human sources. So like you're writing your dissertation, right? And so you have to quote people. Well, you can't quote people who never existed or who are in the future. So the Urantia book is celestial beings writing like a dissertation using humans that have preceded this. And we hadn't discovered the unconscious at that time, not really. Freud had discovered, you might say, in the 1910, 1920.
2020.
20 really, but
Yeah.
Jung is in more like 1930s, right? So
Yeah.
and amplifying that. So the Urantia book doesn't really use that source. If it were written today, it would probably talk about this issue of the shadow.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
take, for example, Judas, since this is Easter week. Judas had a projection of his unconscious onto Jesus. And that's unique in the Urantia book because it talks about the psychology of Judas. It actually tells you in some detail what he was doing. And it more or less says he projected that the bad guy was Jesus.
Mm.
And he really did honestly think that. It was his shadow projected onto Jesus.
Yeah.
So to that extent, you can get a shadow concept from the Urantia book. And it's interesting that with the time it describes, the Urantia book describes the resurrection in great detail. Like the Bible's like this much. It's got a few paragraphs. In the Urantia book, you got like 50 pages.
Mm.
Not only the resurrection, but the resurrection appearances. But anyway, at the point of the ascension of Jesus, right, from the Bible, he ascends into heaven. So it has a depiction of Judas's personality compared to Jesus's personality at that moment.
Mm.
And that's telling you, here's the shadow, here's the person who fails as a person because it doesn't have enough self-awareness. And here's the victory of self-awareness. That's Jesus, right? In perfection, really, self-awareness in perfection. And Judas is his shadow is completely obliterates,
Mm.
really. And so he commits suicide. So why did he do that? Because he got a shadow reflection at the end of
Mm.
the fact that he then realized he betrayed his friend.
Yes, there are three concepts I think humanity also needs to learn. There is projection for sure, ignorance and deflection, like a psychological phenomena. We need to study this more, I think, just to be able for the mind. Okay, maybe I did do some projection now. Uh, oh, I'm disturbed of this behavior in another person. Okay, let's look inwards. Do I have a little bit of aspect of that myself, maybe sometimes? Like this. And there you can gain some consciousness. That's my thoughts.
I
Uh,
think that's totally right,
okay.
David.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We have uh, gone into a little bit what we call soul work. Let us call it this. We have now over 1 hour of shooting. Time goes fast. But to conclude this, I want also to talk about celestial beings, some kind of cosmology, extraterrestrials, just to have that aspect also, not just staying on Earth, but going a little bit abroad. Okay, let us talk about that.
Please go ahead.
The small matter.
Yes.
So which one? Celestial
In
beings or
Urantia Book, are they talking about specific details about extraterrestrials, celestial beings? Maybe Michael is more, maybe an angel is a metaphorical symbol for something. I don't know. I know some, but I want to hear your thoughts, of course.
well, after 50 years of this, I can try to boil it down. But people should know I have a blog. It's a Substack blog where I just posted some pretty major essays on that question. It's
Mm.
called Union of Souls, Union of Souls, and just look that up under a Substack Union of Souls with my name. So I just posted it actually yesterday about celestial beings in relation to aliens, so, angels and aliens, and what's the distinction. And the Urantia book has a pretty big revelation about life on other planets. Like everything, it's like covers everything, right? So there's life on other planets. And, when it came through, we weren't even aware that there were other galaxies. We weren't even sure that we had a galaxy in the 1920s until Hubble really just, demonstrated not only the galaxy, our galaxy, but there had to be other galaxies. So this is now, the Urantia book is telling people in the 1930s, when it came through, that there are 7 trillion inhabited worlds, and that there are galaxies beyond number. Back then, they weren't sure there were. They couldn't really identify them in telescope. So it said there were millions and millions of galaxies, and there were trillions of inhabited worlds. So then it tells you there's 7 types of ETs, and they're scientific discussion. Some breathe oxygen, and some don't even breathe. They're extraterrestrials that don't have an atmosphere. So they subsist on light, sunlight, different types. And some types of ETs are aquatic. They live in oceans, right? The very small minority of worlds are aquatic. So there's different types. And so angels, of course, are other dimensions. So they're outside of space and time, but not very far outside of space and time. So they're invisible and they're etheric, right? They're subtle bodies. So they're subtle bodies. And there's gradations of angels, which we already knew from all traditions, knew that there are levels of angels, right? They're angels and super angels, right? So they're seraphim and then they're archangels. But there's no literature in the world even close to the Urantia Book on angel types and functions. Not even close. That's one of the primary revelations, is the nature of the angelic host. And I say that because of the cosmology, right? So the cosmology of the Urantia Book, everybody should know at least one thing, that there's space-time, time and space, evolutional, and then in the center of that, literally the center, is outside of space-time. It's the singularity at the center, right? It's not on the left side or the right side. It's in the center of all things is the creator. But the creator is not just like a point in the sky. There's a universe they call the mother universe, the central universe. So imagine there's a mother universe that's always been there forever. It never was created. It's always been there. It's been there from eternity. So there are angels that come out of the central universe. Who are these angels? These are angels that were created there outside of space and time, and then they're sent out to space-time worlds. And but there's in the central universe, there are permanent residents, permanent. They're not even angels, they're higher than angels. But some of them have a mission of descending. They're called descending sons and daughters of God. They descend down to the dense planets. So they're coming like from seventh heaven, you might say, down to the bottom. And that's the beauty of it. And the great beauty of an incarnation, such as we believe of Christ Michael, he's from the center of the universe. He's from outside of space-time, who comes to his local universe and then incarnates at the lowest density. In between all those levels are angels that administer the worlds that are higher dimensional worlds. Those are not planets of space and time, but there are spheres in the higher dimensions. They're worlds that are actually physical, but they're physical in higher dimension. When you get to higher dimensions, they still have the 100, the atomic chart, our atomic chart. They have the 100 plus elements of the atomic chart, but they have another 200 elements. So their atomic chart is 300 elements in the higher worlds. So in the lower world, our lower world, it's 100 plus elements. So those worlds have physical, low physical existence. So the angel is quasi-physical, right? So the Urantia Book has a new word for that. It was coined word. It was called merantial. That means they're not perfectly spiritual and they're not material. They're in between. So what we call them merantial beings. So again, it's like they're not physical, but certain angels can become physical, right? So Gabriel appeared to Mary in the Bible as an apparition, right? So certain angels can come into physical matter, but other angels their resonance is too high, they can't. But a deity who's at the highest vibration level can do that. And why is that important? Because this is Easter week, number one. Number two, because it's the most beautiful thing imaginable that the highest being can come down to the lowest and lift you up. But the angels are there to support this project. This is great project of lifting up humans from the soil so that they,
like you do, Byron, huh?
like we all do.
Yeah, yes.
And we have to lift up young people. We have to lift each other up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so the last big part is the afterlife. Let's just say
Mm-hmm.
things about the
Yeah.
afterlife. So the Urantia book is really superior on what is the nature of the afterlife. And they're able to be special because the cosmology is bigger. So think of the cosmology of the Bible, it's so narrow. So if you need a big cosmology to understand the afterlife. Why? Because in your afterlife, you have eternal life. Now, remember in the Bible, it says, especially Gospel of John, says there's going to be eternal life. But like, what are you going to do up there? Like, it sounds boring. But you need a description of what's going on up there. Well, when you get up there, you have an eternal life to study. You're going to get like 100 PhDs. You're going to study everything. And you have like, in your inner life, in your soul, is going to grow endlessly until you hit perfection. And the angels are there to support that. They too are evolving. The angels are also evolving. They're evolving. They're not perfect either. They're just at a higher frequency. So they're evolving by helping you. And we're all evolving together to this completion, complete enlightenment of the space-time universe. So imagine this, right? So all planets on all worlds get to enlightenment. All the planets on all the worlds get to perfection. And then you've completed this project.
That
So, your voice cut out.
errors here now from you, but Elif is still here.
I'm still here, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Byron. Afterlife, it is a main knowledge we also human has to know. There is something about afterlife. Is my voice? You hear my
Yeah.
voice? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Perfect. But I want to add with some knowledge from Elif about the seventh dimension, which we started this episode, to complete this, knowledge from Byron with the seventh dimension and the evolution of humankind, and being physical and etherical and coming down, coming up to something. Okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a big sacrifice when I look at the story of Michael to come from a very high dimensions into a very harsh, dirty material, high density realm. It's a big sacrifice. It's an experience at the same time. Because if you govern something, if you're the prince, you need to know everything. So you need to get back into the experience you created. This is a laboratory, a simulation zone where we learn things. And sometimes we dive into the experiment ourselves. And like fallen angels, the story of fallen angels, maybe we are fallen angels, maybe all humanity is now partly fallen angels, let's say. So this is an experience. Let's make this experience a better experience. And this is when we use our purpose, when we use know our reason, that creation, reason of creation. Then we get more, in line with the existence. And that makes us more eligible for higher realms, as you know, being one day managers, directors, whatever we are entitled to. But this story goes on, this simulation of this Nabadon universe, let's say the local universe, as Urantia says, and there are other definitions, of course. It takes up to the seventh dimension, because until then, until that dimension, we have duality. So we have pros and cons. We have spiritual high purposes and shadow work, let's say, good or bad, plus and minus. But when you come to a very tranquil state, which we can reach through meditation or through channeling, you experience something else. And this is where we need to take the humanity to. That's our work. And we write, we channel, we talk, we make archives like this. Voices of Harmony is a very big archive for the future. It's the future's voices spoken here. And it is not only a program of a broadcast, it will be reflecting the consciousness codes. It's a very important thing here. Maybe it's not much visible yet. It's quite new, but it has some other things behind it, beneath it, as David also knows very well. So let's be it. Afterlife is also here. You know, there is no death, actually. It's an illusion. So we have to continue as much as we have to go, and we have to combine these codes of consciousness to accelerate the program, the meta program, because it's too slow right now. And when it gets too slow, and you know, it falls down to the worst level of this, where we, as Byron says, we have to get them out of the soil, you know, out of the earth. We shouldn't let them fall too much. And that's why in 1920s it started, because they started the accelerated evolution program. They said, okay, the religions did bring humans to a certain level. Let's launch a program. Okay, let's give humans everything. Inventions were made, industrial revolution was made, and what happened? 2 world wars happened when you give too much to humanity. Then there needed to be something to contain the humans. So this channel books started to be downloaded. I call it downloaded.
Yep.
Because you cannot escape when they say, okay, Elif, take a pen of, I always live with this, you know, it's you don't know when it's going to come. Okay, you hear something, okay, writing time. So this is a downloading, and now we have many people that downloads it. I think that's a huge broadcast, and we need to combine this broadcast somehow. This is what I want to say. And yes, seventh dimension or the golden age can be tomorrow if we do it, because time is consciousness. Yeah.
Just add a little bit about magnetic fields. So
Okay.
yeah.
You want me to say it? Okay, we
Yes,
have
of
rays,
course.
we have
Yeah.
electricity. I mean, when thoughts happen, thoughts is kind of the exercise thing. We just don't need the thoughts, but we need the generator that thoughts is making the generator work. And if it works properly, it resonates. The electricity has electromagnetic field, and that can be enhanced into combined. For instance, here we are combining some consciousness codes. We don't come together biologically. We don't need the biosphere anymore because we have the noosphere. Codes of consciousnesses unified, and that creates another existence. We are here to create another existence.
Perfect.
This is what we have to do. Yes, we can unify what we already have, but it is not working that way. So that's why we need programs, meta programs, which is going to make something different than has been done before. It's like same thing is happening now, what was happening in 1920s. So it's very exciting. It's and I think I'm so hopeful for the future, despite I know the war. I don't know where any of you or our audience in the West, did you have any sound of a bomb exploding very next to you? It happened to me, so I know what it means. I know how desperate it is to be in a war. It's not like when you watch it on the television, believe me, it's not. So please, hands under the stone, we call it. So we have to do something about it immediately. That's
Thank
why
you.
we are here.
Okay, thank you very much, Elif.
Thank you, David.
Okay, I planned for 45 minutes, but it was supposed to be longer because it's
Really?
replication of knowledge. You know, when you see this episode, you will see the red thread, the wholeness of it. And I thank you very much, Byron, for coming here and taking your time, your effort. And Elif also, thank
My
you for
pleasure.
being there. And let's conclude this and happy Easter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Happy Easter.
thank you very much, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Elif.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Byron.
Good
Thank you,
Jurai.
David.
Oh, wait. You're right. Yura is our technician, so I have to thank him. He's sitting backstage and handling everything. Thank you, Yura.
He's our everything.
Yes, yes. I will not forget this time. No. Thank
No, okay. It's our everything.
Okay, bye bye.
Goodbye.